Peter, what do you...
Got it.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Whiskey Shaman podcast. We have a special guest today. We have Germ from Freedom Malts. We're going to talk about some American single malt today, and we're going to get into that. So yeah, let me introduce Germ, and he can, Germ, if you don't mind, give everybody your socials and where they can find you.
Well, yeah, you hit it right on the head. German Freedom Malts. YouTube, you can find me at Freedom Malts. Also on Instagram, same handle on Instagram. I don't have any other socials at this point in time, so I don't do a lot on Instagram just because it's one of those things where it's a learning curve. I'm a
Yeah.
little bit older, so figuring out all that technology is definitely a little bit difficult sometimes, but trying to stay with it and get with the times and do some stuff. So hopefully do a little bit more on there
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah,
And
Instagram is a hard one to get into. It's you almost have to post something every day before it even starts to take way. But since we're getting started, we're both I could get the striker, I guess. We're both gonna get some Andalusia in us, and because that's why we're here. We're here to talk about whiskey, and why not pick a good American single malt to get started with. What was I going to ask? Crap. So you mainly review and talk about single malts or American single malts mainly, or
yeah, for the most part, yeah. So obviously my whole thing is I like the passion and the drive of smaller craft distilleries. It's just I love that aspect of the whiskey business. American single malts to me definitely is one of the coolest things out there right now. Reasons being, nobody watching this was alive when the TTB decided to make the other American whiskey an actual category, right? So
right,
bourbon. Nobody watching this was alive when bourbon was made, right?
right,
So we get to witness this happening right now. Yeah, they're being a little slow about it. It's taking a little bit longer than I think it should, but it's the government. They don't work fast, right?
no, they don't.
But yeah, I mean, American single malt, it's single malt as a whole category has been huge throughout the world and growing rapidly through every country out there that you can think of. I mean, shoot, South Africa's even got a single malt.
Yeah,
I mean, how weird is that, right?
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But I mean, here in America, obviously bourbon has been our thing. That's the quintessential American spirit. Man, this American single malt stuff is oof, it's climbing the ranks real fast. And we are as a country making some fantastic whiskeys in that category.
Yeah, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. And the funny thing is, like, being in Texas whiskey, not just American single malt, but Texas whiskey in itself is 12, 15 years old. That's about it. There was some moonshiners and stuff back in the day that were doing some stuff, but it really started with like Tito's vodka. They kind of put Texas on the map for distilled spirits in general. And that was like 18 years ago. And
Right.
then everybody's like, oh, well, we can make a whiskey. And so there's some, and so to think that the American single malt is not that much older than that. I mean, I don't know exactly who was the first to make a single malt in America. I'm sure you would probably know more about that than I would, but like it's so fun to see, and they're doing so many cool things like with Andalusia. They're peating, using Irish peat to peat their whiskey. They're doing all sorts of crazy bottling things. It's just amazing to see these mainly craft distilleries putting out some amazing products.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, it's as far as the first American single malt out there, the nod's got to go to McCarthy's over
Yeah,
at Clear Creek.
yeah.
Um, they put their first whiskey in a barrel in 1992.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, I mean, we're talking quite a while ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not too many people followed suit until we start getting into the 2003 range,
Mhm.
2002, 2003 range with Stranahan's and a couple others that came on board around then. St. George Spirits out of Colorado or California. Also one of the first. I mean, if you're going to talk about the OGs of American single malt, St. George and Clear Creek are the leads there. St. George's first whiskey went into the barrel in 1997. So
Wow.
definitely been around for a while. And the mad push to make this a category started probably in about 2016.
Mhm.
Actually, I think it was exactly 2016 when the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission was founded.
Right.
So,
And I know that Jared over at Balcones is one of the driving people on that, on the board or whatever over there. And
absolutely.
you know, and he, what's funny, if you don't know the backstory of Balcones, we can get into that on another episode, but he was the one that was like trying to push this, especially in Texas, this single malt thing. And everybody's like, no, you need to do bourbon, you need to do, you know, a rye, you need to do all this. And he's like, we will, we just got to perfect this single malt. And the thing that they were doing is they were putting the single malt in new oak. And it was like, it was totally changing the flavor profile of it. And then they started doing, you know, releasing things in used oak. And then they, you know, they do all those special finishes now, which is, they're all amazing. And they were not afraid to put some stuff out at cast strength or higher than cast strength. You know, sometimes they're
Right.
hazmat, you know, and so it's just really cool to see people this driven in a community, you know, the whiskey community, the American single malt community. And then you get people like Westland and you know, all those others that are out there. I mean, I'm of course I'm losing my mind on them right now, but yeah. And then as you look behind Germ here, we have, you know, Lost Lantern and all of them that are doing independent bottling of these single malts. And it's crazy to see how in a short amount of time it has just grown and turned into this juggernaut in the game right now.
Right. And you know, you brought up Balcones. I mean, the American single malt is getting some recognition throughout the world. Balcones has won a malt whiskey award in Scotland. I
Yeah.
mean, did that ruffle some feathers over there? I bet you it did.
I'm sure.
But I mean, and then I mean, to the point where one of the world's leading Scotch conglomerate companies decided that Balcones was something that they wanted to have under their umbrella as well, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and Remy Cointreau also they're in the game as well with American Single Malt.
Mhm.
They have Westland.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely becoming recognizable around the world, and it needs to be a little bit more recognized in the States here, I think.
I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love bourbon. I think it has its place. It's obviously America's whiskey, and it's our own thing. Whereas like single malt, you know, started not in America. So I
Right.
get why people want to latch on to bourbon so much, but bourbon has so many strict guidelines that you have to follow that it makes it kind of it binds your hand so much. Whereas if
Yeah.
you know, if we could just put that in a used barrel, for one, you know, everybody's talking about this barrel shortage. You know, if we could just put it in a used barrel, it totally changes the flavor profile. I've had some
Absolutely.
bourbon mash bill whiskeys that are in a used oak, and they are amazing. I mean, they're just some good stuff. But we don't get to do that because, you know, bourbon has to be in a new barrel. So the fact that single malt can basically be in any barrel you want, I mean, you know, that's one of the driving forces. And I think why more and more single malts are coming out there is because
Yeah.
they're not, their hands aren't tied to the new oak. Now
Right.
with the striker, they use new oak for their stuff, but I don't know how much longer they're going to be doing that, because when I was talking to Moose the other day, he's like, yeah, barrels are getting hard to get a hold of. They're getting more and more expensive. So therefore that makes the bottle price get more expensive. So he's like, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to do that. They do have contract for a number of years with this cooperage. So I think they'll be fine for the foreseeable future. But at the
Right.
same time, if it's, and they're a very small distillery, think about all the however many other ones there are in the United States. That's using a lot of wood per
Yeah.
day, I would say. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You know, and to touch on that point as well, or to add to it, you know, Scotland making most, you know, all of their stuff, most of their maturation barrels come from our big distilleries here. So
Yeah.
Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, you know, so on and so forth. All of those big ones that everybody knows, those used barrels, once they made their bourbon, they get shipped over to Scotland, and that's where all of that wonderful Scotch gets matured in.
Yeah. Yeah.
American single malt starts taking off, those barrels are going to stay in the States, and people are going to start using them here. And what's that going to do to the stuff coming out of Scotland? You know,
Right. Yeah, they're going to have to do a lot more wine finishes and stuff like that, and they're going to have to use a lot less of the bourbon barrels, um, which is not a horribly bad thing. I mean, I prefer most of my scotches. I prefer them to be in a port or a sherry or something like that. I mean, it just gives it a little bit of a different flavor because if you've had one Highland single malt, you've had quite a few of them. They're very similar, especially if
yeah,
it's in first fill bourbon barrels. It
yeah,
just doesn't lend a whole lot other than some vanillas and maybe a little bit of tannin. But when you have a wine finish on it, it can really bring out some cool stuff in the whiskey. So we'll
yeah,
see what happens with that. But yeah, no, it's very interesting to think what the future of American single malt, and then in turn the future of Scotch and Irish whiskey as well, what
right,
that's going to do to it. So yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. And I mean, I know. Okay, so and Highlands you brought up, that's a region in Scotland that makes, you know, obviously whiskey, and a lot of them are very similar. You know, and a lot of them are different enough to where you can tell it's not the same, you know, not the same distillery and all that kind of stuff. Uh, but regional divides in America are the same way with single malt. I mean, you got the Pacific Northwest, who, for lack of a better description, I mean, most of those guys making that whiskey up there come from a brewer's background
Yeah.
where they were making beer, and craft beer scene exploded up in the
Hmm.
Pacific Northwest when
It
it
did.
did. And a lot of those guys have now switched into making whiskey and single malt whiskey. And I mean, that's a definite regional characteristic of the Pacific Northwest.
Mhm.
You got the South and the Southwest, where like stuff like Del Bach and Kilkeegan, they're smoking with mesquite. I mean, that is
Hmm.
a definite Southwest regional thing. And
Hmm.
you know, Texas, obviously, we got that high heat in Texas and low humidity in the central part of the state, where that totally plays a part on the maturation of the whiskey and
Yeah.
gives it a distinct characteristic.
Mhm.
So I think after the category is made, I think at some point in time, we're going to see similar things as Scotland has regions. I think we're going to see something similar to that here. The only issue is our country is huge. So
Yeah.
divide that into 5 or 6 regions would probably be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe we can hit 10 regions
Yeah.
or whatever, or what, you know, whatever the case may be. I think that's something that should be on the table.
Yeah. And like even to caveat off of that, like you get Texas, and Texas always wants to be its own thing. So, it's probably just going to be regionally Texas whiskey. But
Right.
like you get into like Colorado with Stranahan's and Talnua and stuff like that, their
Yeah.
profile is vastly different than say Westward or
Right.
some of these Pacific Northwest distilleries. So yeah, I mean I can't wait for that. And I'm really intrigued with a lot of these, or they're using locally grown peat. They're using locally sourced grains and all of these things that like make it more American. Like we're
Right.
not having to source. Now I know that going back to Balcones, I know they use a lot of Golden Promise, which is a Scottish barley.
Yep.
But if you can get a barley grown in Texas or in the United States or in your region, then that makes it that much more yours. And like with the Paladuro from Andalusia, they're using Texas grown barley. That's pretty awesome. That now obviously, Texas isn't known for growing barley, so it's, I'm sure the yield on it is not great. They have enough to fill a couple barrels and that's it. But at
Right.
the same time, if we can make wine, we can make barley. It's the same kind of concept. You just got to make sure you get it fertilized and watered.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, what I really would like to see, and I know there's a couple in the like the northeast, but I'd like to see more over there, New York and Philadelphia and stuff like that. I'd like to see more of that category and kind of see what their flavor brings, because I kind of know the Pacific and the Southwest and
Sure.
Texas, but over there it gets a little. I've had some Ohio stuff. I've had some Kentucky's trying to do it, but they're ran by bourbon, so it's kind of hard there. But yeah, I'd like to see some stuff out of the northeast, because I think
Okay.
it would be kind of cool. Which ones do you know of out of the northeast that are doing some cool
Well,
stuff?
so you got Hill Rock.
Hmm.
Hill Rock is probably one of the most absolute traditional distilleries out there. I mean, it's an estate. They grow the grain, they mash it, they ferment it, they distill it, they bottle it. I mean, everything is
Wow.
in house from growing to bottling, all right there. They're floor malting even.
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
they're back to the roots of making single malt whiskey, right?
Hmm.
Copper Fox is a little bit further south. That's in Virginia, but
Hmm.
definitely a unique one, and they got a couple firsts under their belt as well. Um, what else we got up in New York? Finger Lakes Distilling, Brookellen. Um, I think Hudson, the Hudson brand makes a single malt.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, they're coming out of there. And
Yeah.
the thing about New York is with their rye whiskey, they have a category that's uniquely theirs called
Yeah.
Empire.
Hmm.
And so a lot of those guys were making Empire style rye, which means the grain, 75% of the grain has to come from New York. They're adapting that into the single malt side of things too, where
Okay.
75% of that barley has to come from New York at a minimum. And yeah, there's definitely a flavor difference between New York barley and, commercially grown large field barley.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Um,
I'm sure.
I mean, touching on Copper Fox a little bit, their barley, the distiller went to Virginia Tech and teamed up with one single farmer at a farm and said, "We're going to go to Virginia Tech. I want them to develop a barley strain just for me and my whiskey."
Oh wow.
And I mean, that's wild, man.
That
Right?
that's amazing, is what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's rocking out some awesome stuff down there in Virginia. Hill Rock, I think, is if American single malt is anything that you're even remotely into, Hill Rock is one you definitely got to try. Um, they are very very good. So yeah, there's great stuff coming out of that northeast side of the states as well. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
and then we got that big old center section of the country, right? You got Iowa, Cedar Ridge. I mean,
Hmm.
if they're not the best, they're number two in American single malt. I mean, those guys, Murphy Quint over there is got something special going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't off the top of my head, I can't think of a lot of them that come out of that central part of the country. Cut Spike out of Nebraska, and I guess we can throw in some Tennessee in there, kinda. With Corsair. Corsair makes some good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
They make
so
some
yeah,
very they make some very weird stuff too.
they do, and
Yeah.
and that's what's cool about it.
Yeah.
You can make weird stuff because you have options available to you. No restrictions on barrel, no restrictions on still type.
Yep.
You know, all of that adds up to making unique and special products.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super cool to see it grow and turn into what I foresee in the 5 to 10 years in the future. Is it pretty much, not that bourbon's ever going to take a backseat, because bourbon,
No. And it should.
and it shouldn't, but like, whenever, like, let's say you're doing a whiskey tasting for people, like, I always bring Andalusia. I always bring one. I don't care if we're doing, high end bourbons. I always bring an Andalusia, or I'll bring a Balcones or something like that. I always try to introduce people into the single malt game. They might not like it, and that's fine. It's not for everybody. Some people want that sweet corn taste, which I get. But I'm really excited to see what's going to happen when more and more of the bars and more of the liquor stores are trying to promote this, because there's more out there, and there's more, when there's more out there, more people want to try it. And that was actually the podcast I was going to do today, was talking about people going to the liquor store and getting a review, like, what do you want me to get? And most people say, oh, get some Jack Daniels or get some Wild Turkey, which, hey, in their self, they're fine, but they don't always
push
the smaller, not even craft, because there's some big, Stranahan's to me is craft, but they're on the upper end of craft. I mean, they're producing some big time releases that are getting all over and Balcones is the same way. I mean, when you're in Scotland, and you can find Balcones on the shelf, that means you're doing something, you know what I mean? And I do understand that they just, got bought out by Diageo. So it makes their transparency. I mean, they're with a lot more, and they're able to reach them, but they were doing that before. And so just to say, now, obviously they have awesome distribution, and it's all because of their business plan. And I'm not knocking that, but that's the thing. If you can compete with the scotches and stuff like that, because most people think of single malt, they think of a peated scotch. That's what they think of, and which that's not the case. I mean, you and I both know that there's some American single malts that taste more like a bourbon than you would even know. Like, there's the bottled and bond Andalusia. It tastes so much like a bourbon, and it's literally 2-row barley, but they put it in new oak. They age it for 4 years. So, like, it gets all that oak and vanilla influence on it. And yeah, I mean, it's really crazy to think, see where it's going to go in the future, because I think it's going to be not just a whisper in the background. It's going to be people actively talking about it, and people like you and I, and hopefully the listeners, going out and looking for these and promoting, asking for them, and promoting these now craft distilleries that will hopefully in one day not be as craft, and people will know more about them, and they'll be able to get more. I was on a live stream last night with Alan Bishop from Spirits of French Lick, and and he was I said, Alan, I can't get any of your whiskey. I know you're just in Southern Indiana, but I can't get any. And he goes, oh yeah, it's at, Liquor King or whatever. And I said, yeah, there's one Liquor King in Dallas. Like, and they're not going to ship to me. They're not going to do any of that. I'm like, I have to know a guy who knows a guy to mule it to me. So he was like, okay, well, yeah. And they're not a very large distillery. They're big enough. They're in 14 states in Canada, but just to get to promote those brands, and I think they're doing a single malt, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to ask him. But anyway, to promote those brands, not promote the big box guys, the big six, not promote those, because they all have a place, but at the same time to keep these smaller craft distilleries going and spending your money there, especially going to the distillery, doing the distillery tours, getting the cocktails, buying the t-shirts, even, stuff like that promotes them and makes them thrive to where they can create better products for you. And that's one of the things that I, on this channel and everything that I try to do, is uplift all of those I hate to say the little guys, but uplift the little guys and give the big guys their due diligence, but uplift the little guys and try and give people options for, hey, if you like Blanton's, you might want to try this, or hey, if you like, Lefroy, you might want to try this, peated whiskey or whatever. So
Right.
yeah, that's sorry, rant over.
No rant. I mean, that's you're hitting the nail right on the head there.
Yeah.
And to add to what you said, you can't get French lick down by you. And,
Yeah.
The guy says it's in a liquor store in Dallas. Okay. One of the things that I feel that could really, really help some of these smaller and not even the smaller ones, but, the level of distribution or the availability to have an online store and sell and ship straight from the distillery.
Yep.
I know you have touched on this in a couple of your other podcasts with that 3-tier system.
Mm-hmm.
It's in place for a reason.
Yeah.
The reason may be a little cloudy.
Yeah.
But it definitely does have its place as far as protection and fairness go. But I think it's become something that needs to be maybe adjusted slightly.
Yeah.
And the shipping laws and so on and so forth could maybe be, I'm not saying completely gotten rid of and all of that, right? But definitely changed up a little bit so that some of these things are more available to more people across the country.
Mm-hmm.
I know Texas, for example, it's very difficult to get anything shipped into Texas.
Yes.
Yes. And certain states are just a no-fly zone. There's zero alcohol shipping allowed in or out. So what do you do with that? And I think just a revision perhaps to some of these shipping laws and so on and so forth could be done, would help out quite a bit.
Yeah. And also, like, a lot of these laws, and I understand the government's going to get their 2 cents in there. I feel like we've knocked on this a couple of times already, but I understand the laws. They're there for a reason, but like, they're also so antiquated in the way that they do it. Like, okay, so not to talk about COVID, but during COVID, you were able, it's especially in Texas, to go to a takeout restaurant and get alcohol, like a margarita in a cup, and take it home. Why can I not call up Balcones and say, hey, can you send me a case of X? What is the difference? And the other issue, especially in Texas, we're only allowed 2 bottles. Now, September 1st, it's going to be to 4. Great. Okay. But we're only allowed 2 bottles per 30 days. So if I go to Andalusia, or like I'm planning a trip to go to Iron Root Republic, and I'm like, I want to buy more than 2 bottles. Like, it's a 6-hour drive for me. I want to make sure that I get my money's worth. If I'm going to go up there, have to get a hotel, have to do all that, because I'm not driving there and driving back. It's not going to happen. So if I have to do that, I'm not going to just pick up 2 bottles, because like, I can't even hardly get their base core stuff here. Because it doesn't even, like I say, once it hits Dallas, it's gone. There's some in the Total Wines, maybe, but good luck with that. As soon as they come in, they're gone. And unfortunately for me, I live in a smaller town outside of a big town. So like, it's an hour drive to San Antonio or an hour and a half drive to Austin. And then once I hit the Total Wine, even if I'm there first thing in the morning, it's all gone. So I can't go to the distillery and pick up, not that I want to have 10 bottles, but at the same time, what if they have a special release? They have a cask strength, they have a barrel pick, they have all of these things that like, oh, this would be really cool in lineup, or this would be cool to have maybe I want to get one for my buddy. Maybe you want one, who knows? I can't do that. Now they do kind of work around it. I put my wife's name down or something like that, but we shouldn't have to be trying to skirt the line. We should just be able, if I go to the distillery, I should be able to get a few bottles. Like, I'm not saying walk out with a barrel, which I probably could do that easier than getting 4 bottles. But anyway, but it's like just changing and adapting the law a little bit to the consumer, because they're going to get their money either way. It's like they're already being taxed on the barrel. They're being taxed on the bottle. They're being taxed on the distribution. They're being taxed at the liquor store. And then I'm being taxed by purchasing it. So it's like you're getting your money no matter what. We're just cutting out one middleman.
Yeah.
That's there's already three middlemen already there. We're just cutting one of those guys out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's gonna change? I don't. Only because, especially in Texas, because we're lenient on a lot of things, legality wise, but there's some things that are a no-go. And
Right.
I think they're going to stay that, even if we were to change, governors or change, policy or whatever, it's going to be a thing for a long while. And we just have to understand that. And I'll just have to, talk to people like you said. You're coming down in a couple months. I might just have to say, hey, if you find any of this, pick some up for me or something like that. Which
Right.
it sucks that we have to do that, but at the same time, I want to be able to share this with everybody as you do. And if I can't get bottles, like my buddy, I guess he's my buddy now. My buddy Christopher Conrad, he's taking over Bad Motivator barrels for Ben. Anyway, if you saw my last one, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. It is. But they're in Oregon, and he's like, I cannot get Andalusia. Can't get in because they don't ship that far, right? He goes,
right.
Would you want a bottle trade? Because there's some Oregon distilleries up here that I would love to give you some of their single barrels or whatever. Would you want to do a trade? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. So we're working on that. So it's like, and I guess for me and for you and whoever's listening, it develops a relationship, which is fine. That's cool. But also, we shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to call up a Oregon distillery, Westward or whatever, and be like, hey, I need a couple bottles. Can you send them to me? No problem. Get it done. But we can't do that. And unfortunately, me talking about it on this podcast isn't going to change anything.
No, and at the very least, go to your favorite retail liquor store and be like, hey, I'm really interested in getting this. And the guy goes into his computer. Yeah, I can't get that. Well, why? He's a liquor retailer with a license that has paid for that license to sell liquor. Yep. Why can't he get stuff from a distillery that's not on his list, right? Yep. I just, and I'm not talking about allocated bottles. That's I'm just talking about, I heard about this distillery. They're over here. They're a little bit smaller. Can you see what you can do? I mean, I just, that's the kind of stuff that I think needs to be changed, Yeah.
And I think by us talking about it, it puts a bug in people's ear. And one day, or hopefully soon, somebody will hear what we're saying and be like, yeah, that is shitty. Why are we not doing something about this? And somebody with the power to do it, because I've signed petitions, I've done all of this stuff, especially here in Texas, to change these laws and to do these things, and not to get, down that rabbit hole, but like, they take what you say, but they're going to do what they want to do anyway. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. You just have to deal with what we got. But hopefully somebody will hear what all of us, and I mean everybody. I see you have the Crowded Barrel thing on your desk, so their trials and tribulations that they've had to go through in building their distillery and trying to get shipping and trying to get to people. They have people wanting their product so bad that, like, it sells out in the Patreon in 20 seconds. You can't get bottles for it. They're having people literally breaking the door down trying to get to them, and it's all because of distribution. They cannot get somebody to distribute their product, and
which is horrible.
It's horrible. Why can't I get somebody to distribute my product? Well, you don't have enough to fill 18 pallets or a 18 wheeler full of whiskey. You have 2 pallets and I can't distribute that. If it's not, Jim Beam or whatever, I can't even distribute it, which I'm like, well, that's not what we want. So yes, luckily for me, I can go to the distillery and pick it up. But at the same time, it's like, you're trying to get product out to people and you can't even do it. You can't
I
do it.
mean, it's like bashing your head up against the wall trying to get
Yep.
this stuff to
Yeah.
make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense, but apparently to somebody it does, and
Yeah.
those somebodies think that that's the right way, and I just don't believe that it is.
No, it's not. Well, we kind of got off topic, which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. But this is all part of it, because
is.
American single malt cannot grow without people talking about the trials and tribulations of American single malt, because
Absolutely.
it has been fighting, an uphill battle the entire time it's been here, because Big Bourbon doesn't want it around because they think it's going to take, two bottle count away from them or something like that. And it's so ridiculous, but at the same time, like we've said at nauseum probably already, but supporting these people and giving them your time and your money, obviously, only makes the whole community grow a lot more. So yeah. So what is, I know you just did a review on the 10-year-old Stranahan.
Yeah.
What is the, and I meant to ask this at the beginning. Sorry guys, I still have a little cough going on, but what is the one besides that one, because I know that one was magical. What is the one single malt that you've been going back to recently that's been like wow, this one is amazing?
Man, so there's too many to list, but
Yeah.
really, I think the one that I go back to the most, and just every time I have it, I just sing it praises, and I'm just happy to be drinking it, is Cedar Ridge. And I'm not talking about anything special from Cedar
Mhm.
Ridge. I'm just talking about their regular, sits on the shelf, the quintessential. It's just absolutely fantastic and hits all the right spots. And it does it for a wonderful price point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's damn near unbeatable.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I have some American single malts from Westland that are, their outpost range here. Um, they're a bit spendy,
Yeah.
and I can tell you they're absolutely stunning,
Mhm.
but they're spendy, and is, I hate to factor cost into how a bottle is, but it has to be factored in because that's part of it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can get it just as an enjoyable experience out of a $50 bottle as I can out of a $150 bottle. Why would I do that? Why would I
Yep.
spend 150, right?
That's right.
But yeah, Cedar Ridge, man, I think that one for me is probably my go back to on a regular basis. I buy a backup of it. When I buy one, I buy two, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it seems to be it's always the one that's close to empty. So
Yeah.
I would have to say that's where my return trip is all the
Yeah.
time.
And unfortunately for the listeners, everybody knows what mine is. Mine is Andalusia, as always. Not to be slowly but even though I'm looking back like you did, like I have some balcones back there, but like the ones that I have are like special release or something. So I like it's harder for me to crack into those. I don't know why. It just is. Like I'm not trying to hoard the whiskey and like, but I'm thinking, oh, I'll save it for a special occasion or something like that, which there's no special occasions. We could die tomorrow and not have that whiskey and be
Absolutely.
bummed out about it. But yeah, I mean, finding a bottle that, for one, like you're saying, that's reasonably priced, which that in itself, that's one of the things that I strive for, is finding a reasonably priced bottle, and then something that you're like, oh, I've already gone through this. Like mine for a while was Early Times Bottled in Bond. I
Okay.
went and it's like what, $22, but like
Yeah.
it is so good. It's 100 proof. Now it's a bourbon, obviously, but it's excellent in a cocktail. Make it old fashioned with it. It goes super cool. But then you can like put it neat, have it on ice. Like I don't feel bad drinking it, but yet I can drink that against a $1,600 scotch as well. And like it's, I don't feel bad drinking it. Now there is some people that say it's hard for them to get early times, which I get. Like, some people aren't going to be able to find stuff in their area, and that's just
Right.
like we're going back to distributing. But yeah, that one for me was my go-to for a while, and now I'm on to I've got two that were like gifted to me, and so I'm going through those. One of them is called Western Sun. I don't know if you've heard of it. They
So,
they started out making vodkas, and they were
okay.
like flavored vodkas, so like peach, and they were all neon colored and stuff. And so my cousin came over, and we had a little cousin weekend, and it was fun. And he's getting into whiskey. He's probably going to listen to this and yell at me, but anyway, he's getting into whiskey and he loves it. And so he brought a bottle, and it was that one, but it's a single barrel pick of their bourbon. But on there, it didn't say straight, so we knew it wasn't 2 years old, and it
Right.
didn't say the age on it at all. And then so I looked it up, and it had one little blip of like a paragraph that said, "Hey, we made a bourbon." And so I was like, okay. So we tried it, and of course it was like a young bourbon. It was fine, little grassy, way too it was almost over oaked for being as young as it was. It was kind of weird. And so like that one to me is really good in cocktails. It's really good like for if you don't want to have to think about a whiskey, you just want to watch some TV and drink some whiskey, it's fine for that. So
Right.
yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that these single barrels that they're supposedly releasing aren't as good as some of their normal releases. Like I've had some single barrels of different whiskeys, even Balcones, to be honest. I have a single barrel pick of their single malt, and it was a Total Wine pick or whatever,
Yep.
that was gifted to me. But at the cast strength, which was like 68% alcohol, which is like
Some
stupid
crazy
hot.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, stupid hot. The issue is like it is so tannic and is so like over oaked, or maybe it's too hot, that I have to put water with it. Like I
Yeah.
can't even drink it straight as it is. And I'm not saying I'm a purist and I want to drink it straight, but at the same time, like I think if the distiller put it in the bottle at that range, that's kind of what he's telling you to drink it at. Now I know with scotches, they tell you go to like 20% on it on some of them if you're tasting them, which I don't know if I would do that. It gets a little watery.
Yeah.
But like with Laphroaig, they say to bring it down to like 20%. And I did that, and let's just say it was like drinking bath water. It was not great. It was like
Mermaid's bathwater.
yeah, exactly. Like it was not great. Like I mean, it's barely it's like 43%, so it's barely
Yeah.
even legal. But and I was talking to Jesse from Stillet, and he's like, yeah, the Laphroaig we get is 40%. It's not even
Oof.
43. And he goes, they water it down even more for us. And he goes, it's funny, not to talk about another guy on here, but he's like, it's a whole lot easier for him to get single malts from Scotland and Ireland and stuff than it is for him to get bourbon. And so he's like, I have so many single malts, I
Yep.
just don't have any bourbon. So whenever he comes to America, he's constantly, grabbing bourbons off the shelf,
In a
because he's
bourbon
like,
frenzy. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because he's like, I don't get this. He goes, I found a bottle of Buffalo Trace or something like that. It was like $120, and I was like, no, there's no way I'm paying that much for Buffalo Trace.
And it's I don't know what their currency is over there. It's not Australian dollars, is it?
No, it's not.
Because
It's
he's in New Zealand, right?
correct. And so it's like
Yeah.
$1.5. So it's $1.50 of what, so like is a lot of money. It was like, $180 or something like that for it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
stupid,
still way
stupid
too high.
expensive. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
Man.
I see you have, I'm not going to keep you all day. I know the little behind the scenes stuff. Jerem had texted me about Andalusia, something about Andalusia, and I was like, well, I was fixing to do a podcast. You want to jump on with me? Because we've been talking about this back and forth for a little bit. And he was like, yeah, why not? So we literally in like 15 minutes like jumbled this
it was
podcast
pretty
together.
impromptu.
Yeah, exactly, which is awesome, and I appreciate the time. But I see you have a whole bunch of Scotch malt Whiskey Association up there behind you. What do you got going on?
So yeah, I've been a member for a little over a year on the SMWS, and I love it, man.
Yeah.
My whole reasoning behind joining the SMWS was okay. So yes, I talk about American single malt, and I love American single malt, and I'm passionate about it. My first love is Scotch. I love Scotch whiskey. I think it's probably, I mean, if you're going to talk about whiskey and not talk about Scotch, you're doing whiskey a disservice, right?
Yes. Yes.
So my whole reasoning behind joining them was because in my area, I'm in northern Wisconsin, we are like in a Scotch desert up here, man.
What?
Obviously you get Highland Park, you get the core range, not even the whole core range. You get Ardbeg 10, you get Laphroaig 10, you get Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, all the very basics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you get. And so as I'm looking into the SMWS, I'm finding names of distilleries that, first of all, I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
Second of all, I have no idea what they make, and I know there's no chance I'll ever get to try them, right?
No.
So I'm like, this seems like something I want to do. So I pony up and I join the membership status of SMWS, and I start buying bottles, and it's like, man, I tell you, you got to really you really got to have a good conscience on what am I doing here, right?
Yeah.
Since the first year, I have been a little bit more picky about what I purchase from SMWS, because I've kind of noticed this theme with them. They release a lot of the same distilleries, and then every once in a while they'll drop this gem that you've never heard of, and it's like, okay, I kind of want to try that one, so I'll grab that. And they do some really cool things. It's very expensive to ship, but they will offer to hold a bottle, and I can buy one bottle this outturn and one bottle next outturn and hold those until I get enough to make shipping reasonable, right?
Got it.
And that's a really cool feature that they have, because otherwise $40 to ship one bottle makes it pretty outrageous, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I have found a couple distilleries that I had never heard of that, I'm going to say SMWS Distillery number 112, Inchmarin.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, never heard of it before. I now know that it's part of the Loch Lomond name.
Mm-hmm.
Loch Lomond, Inchmarin, Inchmone, and Croftanga are all pretty much this. I mean, it is the same distillery with different stills.
Right.
And, man, I just love that profile. The still signature on that whiskey is fantastic.
Yes.
And when they release a 112, I pay attention. And I've got 3 of them sitting up here right now. One of them at a 25-year-old, one at a 16, and one at a 19. And I got another one coming in the mail right now that's a 21. And
oh man,
I mean, I just couldn't be happier with that membership. I'm so glad that I did it. Plus, I've gotten to try some other stuff. So SMWS also, let's take this back to American Single Malt. They've recognized that American Single Malt is on the rise, and they have bottled some American Single Malts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the cool thing here is the tasting panel that puts out, that says, okay, this is what we're going to bottle right now. That it's a panel of people, and it's always the same people that choose these things and choose the names and all of that. They're picking American single malts to put into bottles. So, I mean, totally different set of palates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're picking unique stuff. Now I have, it's not up there right now because I'm working on something else with it, but it's a Brooklyn American single malt. Now I just ordered also with this last order that I made a Copperworks out of I'm not going to remember if they're Oregon or Washington, but they're up in that
one of those.
West. Yeah. And then a Balcones.
Yeah, and I almost jumped on that one too.
Yeah, and there's a couple of those left. So I mean, the Balcones one went a little faster than I thought, and it's weird. The American single malts on their shop sit for a long time. The Brooklyn one, they still have a ton of them left, and it's fantastic. It's a 7-year-old. It's new charred oak. So it's got that, it's got that really nice malt with the American twist of new charred oak on it.
Right.
And it's a fantastic whiskey. It's proofed a little high, but water helps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so a couple months ago, I ended up joining as well. And I know we've talked about this on here. And to me, it is just like, it's a breath of fresh air, because not only are they doing like distillery releases, but they're doing like, oh, this is cool, you might like this. And of course their tasting notes are just outrageously cool to watch. But my wife actually for Father's Day got me the Campbelltown release from the
festival release.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
cool.
I think it's a 7 or 8 year old Springbank, more than likely. And I can't wait to crack into that. I'm trying to wait till my birthday, September. I'm trying to wait till my birthday to open it, because, special release. I want it to be for something, like I say, I'm going to die with all this whiskey and not drink it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, that's the first bottle I've actually got. And, of course I didn't even buy it. So I asked my wife, I was like, how was the shipping? She goes, it got here in like 3 days. I don't know how it got here so fast, but it got here in like 3 days. And like, yeah. And I said, well, was shipping crazy? She's like, not really. I mean, for the one bottle, obviously, like you're saying, it's expensive, but she's like, I needed it right then because it was kind of a last minute thing. She was like, oh, and she had to like hack into my email, because I didn't put it on our shared email thing. I kind of did it on my work email and stuff like that. And so she had to hack into it and get my passcode and all that crap. And I'm like, wow, so you're like sleuthing and doing some hacker shit on me. Great, cool.
Good for
cool.
her, man.
Yeah, exactly. Which
that sounds like a keeper. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, we've been married over 20 years. She knows me by now, but yeah, no, it's I'm so excited about it, and I really want to get into that Lost Lantern too, because I know they're doing some really amazing stuff. They're fixing to release an Andalusia, unless they have already.
They haven't released it yet, but it's coming.
I'm gonna grab that one. I know I grab every Andalusia there is, but knowing that another independent baller has said that, hey, this whiskey is pretty awesome, you should try it. That to me says something. So I can't wait for that one to come out. I almost got the Balcones release on that one as well, but I was like, man, I can get Balcones all over the place, and I can get single barrels and stuff. So, I kind of didn't jump on it, but I need to get into the independent bottling game, because I think that's where the next step is.
Fun. It's definitely fun. And as much as I love independent bottlers, like I said to myself when I joined the SMWS and I got my first set of bottles, I said to myself, I think this is the only way I'm going to go. I'm not going to buy anything but independent bottled scotch, right? Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, no.
So now I just buy both, and it's fine. Yeah. It is what it is, but they are definitely super fun bottles to get into. And I have a few. I run a whiskey group, local whiskey group here called the Northwoods Whiskey Nerds, and I know a few of the guys are a little bit into scotch, and they don't have that SMWS access,
right?
Or they're not a member, or whatever the case may be, and they really get excited when I bring a few of those bottles around. And it's like, they know I mean, it just the name alone, it's like it's a premier independent bottler.
Yeah. And I think if we had more of those in the US, I know that Crowded Barrel is trying to do some stuff like that as well. The issue with them is they're doing single barrel release. So you get 200 bottles, and then if they cut them to 375s, you get 400 bottles. Shit, that's not even their Patreon. After that, it's gone. So it's like I've been able to get a couple of them, like the Iron Root, and the one that was really good was the Wyoming whiskey that one of the first ones they did. It was super good. It was like, it ended up being almost like an 8-year-old Wyoming whiskey. It was super good. But the issue is, you just can't get them. And so I think they're trying to ramp that up and get more and more into independent bottling, which I'm excited about. But yeah, this Lost Lantern, and I know there's a couple others in the US that are doing the same
Yeah.
thing. You know, that to me, it like showcases the distillery, but yet it sends it in a certain profile to where you're like, we like this, so we think you might like it. So it's not like
Right.
it's not from their core range or you know, nothing like that. So if you're getting that Andalusia bottle, it's not going to be their standard triple distill. It's going to be their triple distilled finished in their brandy or whatever, you know.
Or whatever
So
it is. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that to me is really cool, like the whole independent bottling thing, because they're not trying to showcase them. You know, obviously they're making a little bit of profit off of it, obviously, but they're trying to showcase the actual distillery that you might not be able to get. They might have a wider reach of distribution,
Yeah.
and therefore, like we were talking about distribution earlier, if you can't find it there, maybe you can find it on Lost Lantern or wherever, or SMWS or whatever. You might be able to find it there.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I think to kind of summarize all this, I think that the future for American single malt is amazing, and it's going to I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years it's going to skyrocket, and it's going to be because of the new oak requirements. People are going to start getting away, especially the craft guys are going to start getting away from bourbon, and they're going to go into more finished products and single malts. That's what I
Yep.
feel. I feel like that's going to happen, and we're going to see people honing their skills because, like you said, a lot of the people that were doing single malt in the beginning came from a beer background. So they know how that barley's going to react. They know how the yeast works. And there's some of them, I know Westland and Westward as well. They're both yeast nerds. Like they
Yeah.
nerd out
Absolutely.
on the yeast and the fermentation, and you know, they try to get a little bit of lactobacillus on it, but then they cut it off before it goes too far. Like all of this stuff. So it's like they're nerding out on this thing, whereas some of the other distilleries are just like making a product, getting it out of there. You know, so it's really cool to see the American malt category kind of go into a new frontier, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
And I'm really excited, and I know you are as well.
Oh yeah.
Okay, one last question before we go. Um, Locally, um, what is the local distillery around you within, you know, a certain amount of mileage? And in that distillery, do they have any sort of distribution to where, like, if somebody like me wants to buy a bottle, could they do that? Do you know of any?
I do. Okay, so I mean, if you're looking for American single malts, Wisconsin does not produce a lot. We have one who is not. I mean, is it local to me? Yeah, is in the aspect of it's in the same state. But Hatch Distillery
Uh-huh.
out of Door County, Wisconsin. They're putting out a single malt called the Doc Wall. Now, I'm not going to get into it here, but if you want to know who Doc Wall is, definitely Google search that guy.
Yeah.
He's paramount in beer fermentation.
Oh, okay.
So they do it kind of a tribute to him with their single malt name. It's very good. It's very earthy and farmy. I always
Hmm.
call it a farmy note.
Yeah.
Um, we also have my localist distillery. It's about 20 minutes away from me. Called Northern Waters. This guy is a whiskey lover, man. This guy loves whiskey, and he saw early on in his career that flavored vodka is where the money was, right? So
Yeah.
he makes a ton of flavored vodkas and gins and this and that and the other thing, but he still loves whiskey. So he's like, I'm going to make whiskey too.
Yeah.
He's got a couple American single malts sitting in barrels that are just waiting to be ready, and I I can't be any more excited.
Yeah.
Actually, I mentioned earlier that I have a local whiskey group. He is in the group. He's part of the group,
Oh, wow.
um,
Okay.
and yeah, definitely a great guy. Awesome business. His whiskey is good. I'm not going to go out and say it's the best whiskey out there, but
Right.
he's young. You know, he's young, and the whiskey's a little young, but he definitely, as craft guys can do, change things up and plays with things in order to find the right avenue to go on.
Right.
So that's cool. Tattersall is another Wisconsin, Minnesota company. So he's got a place in both states.
Okay.
They do an American single malt, and they are getting some good distribution. They're getting a little bit more popular. But if you want a Wisconsin whiskey that is top notch, that I can't say anything else about, but it's great and probably has some distribution around. I mean, it's getting to be pretty large. Driftless Glen.
Yep.
Driftless Glen makes bourbon. They make rye. They have dabbled in American single malt. It maybe wasn't the greatest thing out there, but
No.
they dabbled, and I don't know if they have more of it sitting and just waiting or what, but their bourbon, their rye is absolutely fantastic. I mean, in fact, I would put it up against anything anybody else is making. And yeah, they're pretty readily available in a lot of states. So keep your eye out for them. But that's a great representation of Wisconsin right there.
Yeah, I think the Whiskey Vault just did a review of the Driftless Glen. There was the bourbon and the rye, and they said that the rye needed to go on the quintessential rye wall, which is a big deal. So I'm really interested in that. Like, I've seen their name floating around. I just, obviously it doesn't come this far down, but I might turn your ear on that one when you come down. Anyway, but yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Okay, so we're going to finish this up because we're running over, and I know you probably got other yard work to do and stuff. So
yeah, I should probably do something around the house
yeah,
today, right?
exactly. You only have one whiskey, so you're good to go.
I should be good.
to
Yeah,
go.
I should be
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all the listeners that are here listening to us, and we hope it was worth the listen. And stay on, Jerm. I want to talk to you for a second, but yeah, I appreciate all you guys, and keep your spirits up.